I'm making a different video this time, something to show you what the data guy does while he's driving at a track day. So you'll get to see a little bit of driving, a little bit of how I do data during the day, a little bit at the end of the day, and then we'll follow it up with some more videos. I hope you really like this.
Wanted to show you real quick, one of the things I like to do is fire up Race Studio 3, get my car going in my dash, connect to it, and just make sure everything's ready to go. So I see that I have all my dash channels, everything's calibrated. Go through, I can turn on my ECU. See I have all my ECU values. Come down. We'll make sure that we have good GPS. I have all my CAN 2 signals. All my expansions are fired up. Everything's ready to go. We have good GPS signal. And the dash sees we're at Lime Rock. So it gives us a good way to make sure we're ready for our day.
Hey, we're back at the office. I recorded this at the track, but I messed up and the audio didn't come through. But I think it's still important to show you something. Is I have a number of profiles set up with a lot of pages in it for my analysis. And the first thing I look at after every session when I come off track, I download my data, and then I go in here and I check the channels report. And I have it set up so I have anything that's important to me, I can look at it really quickly. So here we have a crankcase pressure. We can make sure that it's building vacuum and we didn't break a ring, something like that. External voltage, see that the alternator's working, that everything's going right. Brake temps, and when I like to look at them, they might not be important to really make sure the car is going, but you can see if things are overheating or maybe they're too cold. Fuel pressure, real important one. Here I have it showing the minimum during the lap and the maximum. I like to have speed just to give me an idea how quick I'm going, how things are moving. As we scroll over, we have more and more things. I have my oil filter temp, the minimum and the maximum, so I can see how that changes across a run and how it goes through time. Same thing, oil pressure. So I have the minimum. If I see one of these numbers artificially low or it's something I don't like, I know it's a problem, but here we can look and see, it shows 11.9 is the low, but that was coming out of the pits when it was kind of at idle. And then as we scroll down, we look, we see a 43.9. That's plenty of oil pressure on the track, and the high is a 71. It's making good oil pressure. I have temperatures in my oil tank because the car is basically oil cooled, being an old Porsche 911 motor. We can see the reservoir, the big tank that I have, never got over about actually exactly 240.3. My right rear rotor temp, it looks like there's probably a problem with it. It's not reading very well. So I should get in there and check that. I can put it on my list of things to do. I have a whole bunch of status variables built into my dash config so I can see if there's any alarms. We see one here, it shows a 1. That turned on the fan that runs the cooler because I'm using the digital outputs for that. We see one here for fuel pressure. It's the last lap. When you shut the car off, sometimes it'll do that. Not something I'm worried about. And then we come across, we have that low oil pressure one. That was at the beginning. We saw that number, and we can dig in and look at it a little bit more. The tank fan, again, that's for the digital output to make sure that the fan's running. The trans fan, same idea as those. And then we get through, we have some that I need to reconfigure or that it didn't get right because they're the tire pressures. And then we have track temp. We can see the low temp on the track was 78 all the way up to 114. So it was a pretty hot day, pretty good track temp in there. And my trans temps. I really suggest you build this for your car. It helps you out. It's the first thing I do because if there's a motor problem, if it's not charging, if it has bad oil pressure or something, my day is done or I got to work on that stuff. So I do that before I jump into any of the data.
folks, the weather started moving in. I pulled the car in. You can still hear some cars on track, most likely. Want to give you a little bit of things that I look for during the day or towards the end of the day, depending on how everything's going. I was instructing, so it was a pretty busy day, driving, instructing, and getting everything. So I didn't get to look at my data quite as much as I wanted, but I have one of my sessions loaded up here. You can see I have time distance graph over here, or video, and I have a XY plot with my understeer on it, and I think might help us out in a little bit. On this session, in lap 3, I had a time I went to turn 1, I went to turn in, the car didn't really respond how I wanted. Lime Rock's at a spot where there's a runoff in turn 1, so I bailed out, but I want to dig in here and see what's going on. We can see that spot here in our video, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm zooming in just using my arrow key. I'm on my trackpad today. My hands are a little sticky, so it gives us a great way we can zoom like that. And we see up top we have our speed, throttle position, brake pressure, steering position, corner radius, and maybe we're going to go in here. We'll turn off radius because that's probably not going to help us a lot with this one. I'm going to click that to turn it off. And our time compare here is not going to help us much. There's not much to compare. As I start looking at this data, I see I turned in or I hit the brakes way later. And if we kind of use our delta function, we can look in here and see it was 108 feet. Like, it's a whole number board later that I hit the brakes. And something pretty cool, because everything's linked, is we can click at our point where we hit the brakes. We see it over here on the green lap is more where I was pretty normal. And then over here on the next one, like, that's a pretty good difference in distance, right? And obviously, as we're digging in this, we can pull up the movies tab, and we'll grab that right here and see it a little bit bigger. That difference from the 5 board down to the maybe 3.5, that's pretty deep. I'm a driver, so I'm going to give you all my regular excuses of what was going on. But what's interesting is we can see when I hit the brake there, it's a pretty bad brake trace. And it looks like maybe I thought I was locking up a wheel. One of the things I'd like to do here is pull up my wheel speeds. And we can put in here speed and pull up both wheel speeds. See if that shows us something. And look at that. That's kind of what I wanted to see. I'm in the mode where I can set my graphs how I want them. So I'm going to move these. Look at this. I did have lock up way back here. But so I came in, I hit the brakes, and my feeling was sort of right. We can see my front left wheel speed on that red lap really dropped down quite a bit. Now I'm surprised it's the left. I would have expected it's the right, but we can see it started to lock up. And that's what kind of got me in this modulation pattern. And it really didn't help, because I don't think it got the wheels spinning. And that's obviously what I saw. And then on my steering input, it's not as good. And we can see in my steering trace, the auto scale is kind of off here. So I'm just going to go back in and let's scale this to something custom so we can get what we want. I'm going to go maybe minus 100 to 100. I'm going to turn off this scaling. Hopefully the noise in the background here isn't too loud for you. And look at this. I always have pretty active hands, but as I started to go for that turn in, I was locking up a wheel. It really wasn't performing how I wanted, and I bailed out. So it's pretty neat when you get that wheel speed data. You can dig into it and really see what was going on. It gives you that next level of detail. So it's always speed is our money channel. That's what tells us how fast we're going. But then throttle, brake, steering as a driver, I always think those are my inputs. That's what I get to do with my hands and my feet. And then the results of that are all the things that we can kind of engineer and see what the car is doing. So we can look at the wheel speeds. I've got shock positions in here, and maybe that'll be a good one for a night analysis.
and I'll sit down tonight or tomorrow, look at it and see what was going on. Is it maybe car setup? Is it something else? Is it something I did or not? As I was driving today and the car was understeering, it was one of the ones I think some of it was definitely driver induced. So I'm going to dig into that and I'll record it for you guys and we'll all take a look.